What is happening in Germany after the conclusion of the Synod of Bishops and the implementation of some of the things approved in it, such as the blessing of all kinds of couples that are not married in the Church, including homosexual couples. What is happening in Germany is more and more similar to what happened with Luther's heresy. Luther nailed the theses of indulgences, the 95 theses on the door of the Church of Wittenberg, the Church of All Saints, in 1517. 2 weeks later, only 2 weeks later, thanks to the means of communication that were then already beginning their splendor, the printing press. 2 weeks later, these theses were known throughout Germany, and 2 months later, only 2 months later, those theses were spread. They were already known throughout Europe, and yet the Vatican, Rome, the Pope did not act. Why? For 2 reasons. These are things that historians say, and they all agree. On the one hand, the contempt towards the individual. They did not give him importance. They did not consider his intellectual capacity, which was great. He was a doctor. He had been named doctor in the Bible, and they despised him, thinking that he was nobody. Leo X said, "Those theses were written by a German drunkard, who, as soon as he's sober, will disdain them," which was not the case. They did not know who they were talking about. But not only that, they also did not know what the political reality of Germany was. They had no idea of the deepest nationalist feeling that existed in Germany, and at the same time of a certain superiority complex. Among many of the German nobles and the cities, there was a strong desire to become independent of the emperor, not to be under his tutelage, and from the religious point of view, to become independent of Rome. 2 years after the beginning of the schism, if we can date it that way, with this thesis in Wittenberg, students came to the university of that city, students from all over Europe who came to listen to Luther, who was still teaching there. 2 years had passed, and Luther was still a professor at that university, with a growing success. It was only in 1520, 3 years later, when Luther wrote to the Christian nobles of the German nation, that they began to worry. That same year, in 1520, Charles I of Spain was elected emperor, the 5th then on in Germany. That book, that pamphlet, was decisive to scare them, among other things, because in that pamphlet he says that the Pope is an antichrist, and also advocates the suppression of celibacy, similar things, not about the antichrist, but about the suppression of celibacy, similar to the German Synod. Then, if they began to worry, they sent a bull to retract their errors. When on December 12, 1520, Luther publicly burned the bull, is when they realized that there was no turning back, and it had to be until January 3rd, 1521, almost 4 years has passed, when the excommunication was finally dictated against him. And yet, not even then was action taken, because he was so protected by the, let's call it so, then political powers of the time. Some feudal lords, above all Frederick of Saxony, he was so protected that not even then did they dare to act against him. The Diet of Worms had to be held, where he was officially declared a heretic. Luther left before the Diet, the meeting of German princes and cities, with the Emperor Charles presiding over it, was closed. He left and was secretly protected by Frederick of Saxony in one of his castles, a rather inaccessible castle, where among other things he spent time translating, for example, the Bible into German. 4 years. 4 years of inactivity that gave him, Luther, the opportunity to continue spreading his errors not only in Germany but throughout Europe, because this did not have repercussions only there, and had, as a consequence later, a terrible and devastating religious struggle between Catholics and Lutherans. It became so strong that Luther's supporters established an armed coalition, the Schismatic League, which was so powerful that Emperor Charles did not have enough strength in his German dominions to confront it, and had to recruit soldiers, hired soldiers in Germany and also in Spain. This situation with Luther is almost similar in so many ways to what is happening now. Support from the media, then the printing press. Today, there is massive support from the media. Why? Because the media are in favor of the German Synod, or because the German Synod says that the dominant ideology wants to impose on all of us? They support the one who supports them, or rather, the German Synod has bowed to the dominant ideology. It is Pope Francis who has said it, that it is a synod, that it has been, because it has already ended. An ideologized and elitist synod. It is Pope Francis who has said that in Germany, there is already a Protestant church, and there is no need for another one. Support from the media, support from the politicians of that time, Frederick of Saxony, the princes and the cities of Schmalkaldic League, and in our time, all those who are trying to impose on us by force, thanks to this permanent bombardment and the imposition of laws, those who are trying to impose the 2030 agenda on us. But there is also the money. I do not know how much money those feudal lords gave Luther to spread his works, for example, to pay the prints that were spread throughout Europe. I do not know today. Perhaps there are also donors for this new beginning of schism. I do not know, but the Germans would not need those donors because it is undoubtedly the richest church in the world, thanks to the religious tax that Catholics have to pay if they do not want to be excommunicated. That is, they cannot receive baptism, they cannot receive confirmation, baptism for their children, for example. They cannot celebrate funerals. And I do not say that they cannot go to confession, because it is very difficult to go to confession in Germany, because there are practically no confessors. 3 similarities from then and now: media support, political support, money in abundance, then from the feudal lords, and today from the German Catholics themselves, many of whom would like to stop helping the church, but the threat of being labeled as apostates keeps them from doing so. And one conclusion, the same. The conclusion is that nothing is being done. Were the episcopate speaking out? Even by the African episcopate, but even the African Anglican episcopates have been much more courageous in speaking out publicly against the blessing of homosexual couples approved in England. Not even a word even from the Africans, let alone the rest of the church. I was saying last week that they have left the Pope alone. We must speak. We must say things with the utmost respect, but we must speak. This silence is thunderous. Silence supports from outside, support from the inside with money and allowing things to happen, allowing things to continue working as if nothing happened, exactly what happened between 1517 and 1521. 4 years that were decisive, and when time came to act, they acted too late. This may be happening now, too late. Let's hope it is not so late that it becomes irremediable and the schism gains a foothold. Until next week, God willing.